Good afternoon, everyone. I think we'll give it just a couple more minutes for allowing a few more people to join us. We'll get started about 12:02.
There's a lot
Hey,
of
John,
AI cool stuff.
can we get your power supply thing again?
Yes.
This stupid thing.
Please.
Are you sure? You kind of hesitated there for a minute.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Tom Mooney's on with us today. He's going to do a presentation for us. But before he kicks it off, I'd just like to let everyone know, save the date for tech this year. It'll be held at DPSST on November 3rd and 4th. So please add that to your calendar. Some topics that will be included are 1142 water supply, communication and bias, and best practices for addressing homelessness and migrant issues as it relates to local fire marshals. And also, before we begin, if you're not muted, go ahead and mute. I love that, Steve, we caught on the recording what you just said a little while ago. So our speaker today is Tom Mooney. He has 30 years of various experience in the fire service. He's worked as a firefighter EMT, rescue technician, confined space technician, hazmat technician, 911 dispatcher, fire inspector, deputy fire marshal, and he's currently the fire marshal for Redmond Fire and Rescue. In addition to that, he also serves on the NFPA Respiratory Protection Committee, serves as the chair to the IAAI Central Oregon District. He serves as the chair for the IAAI Health and Safety Committee and the Oregon Fire Service Health and Safety Collaborative. He's an advisory board member for the University of Miami's FLAIR, which stands for Fire Investigators Lived Awareness and Risks and Exposure Study. And he's director with the Oregon Health and Safety section that represents the fire service on the Central Oregon Occupational Safety and Health Conference. Tom also works as an adjunct professor for the Central Oregon Community College Fire Science Program. And I'll turn the stage over to you, Tom. Thanks again.
Perfect. And in my free time, I do nothing. So, well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today. So, normally this presentation can go 2 to 4 hours. Laura said I had half a day, so hopefully that's okay, Laura. So I'm just going to kind of really skim the surface when we talk about fire investigator health and safety in this kind of abbreviated roughly 45 minutes that we have together. So hopefully if something really sparks your interest, you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk more in depth on stuff. But there's always other resources out there that I'll direct you to, and I'll talk about those in my presentation here. So really what we're going to talk about, just kind of have a better understanding of what health hazards you're going to face in that kind of post-fire environment that we're dealing with as fire investigators. And I'm going to talk about some brief research that's kind of going on right now that we're involved with. And I'm kind of excited about some of this research that's coming out. because it's going to give us a lot of great data that we've really been waiting on. That's going to help drive hopefully some changes in some PPE. So just kind of give you a quick overview. So just know that I think I'm probably preaching to the choir that, anytime you go to a fire, there's always smoke, there's products of combustion, and there's always gases, right? And there's gases that linger for days on end. And those particulates are also floating around out there. So there's never a scene where those particulates don't exist. So if that scene's even been sitting for 72 hours or a week, the particulates are still there. So it's just a matter of how those particulates get disturbed and suspended into the air, and how you protect yourself from that. There is this different research out there that tells us how we can protect ourselves, but there's still more research that's coming, and I'll talk about that here in a few minutes. And then kind of what PPE you should be wearing, and what fire scenes, because we've broken them down into kind of different categories based upon what's going on at that scene. So why is this important to you? So I want you to think about like a career firefighter, right? So when they're on duty, they may work maybe 9-10 shifts in an entire month, not including any overtime shifts they may pick up, right? So that's maybe like 1 to 5% of their actual on-duty time that they're doing. So say in a year's time, that's like 2,912 hours in their year. So break that down. They might work like, if they do 5% on the worst case scenario, 145 hours, right? So what we did, we broke it down, try to figure out, okay, what is the fire investigator's actual exposure, right? So if they work a 10-hour shift, or they're working 49 hours in that month, like what is their exposure? So we know now that our exposure is actually greater than that of a firefighter. So if you're working for a real busy department and you're getting tapped on multiple fires in a month, think about that. That firefighter might have worked only 5 shifts that month or 9 shifts that month, and you're out there pulling, and they only went to 1 or 2 of those fires, but maybe you went to 7 or 8 of those fires. So now plant that seed and think about how much of your exposure now is now greater than that of the firefighter. So we took the fire scenes and we kind of broke them down. We kind of treated them like almost like a hazmat incident, because that's pretty much what this structure fire is. It is a hazmat incident. And so we broke it down by time and distance. And so on a time base, we broke it down as a hot scene A, hot scene B, a warm scene, and a cold scene. And these are all kind of time dependent. And then we also created a distance base to create kind of that post-fire scene analysis. And then so next slide, I'll kind of get into a little more deeper on these here. So that hot scene really is that fire scene where it's the fire, it's been extinguished, but overhaul hasn't quite commenced, or it's just starting in progress. So, and then the hot scene B is that fire scene. It's been extinguished. It's overhauled, but it's been less than 2 hours. The warm scene is a fire that's been fully extinguished at least 2 hours, but less than 72 hours. And then that cold scene it's a fully extinguished fire. It's probably boarded up, and it's been at least 72 hours. And you're not detecting, generally you're not generating a detectable or visible dust, fumes or mist or things like that. But just keep in mind that those things, while you may not detect them, they're still present. So just like a hazmat incident, so we broke, like I mentioned before, we broke this incident down, like I said, into the hot, warm, and cold. This is just to show you kind of an idea of how we did that and why we did it. And I'll show you another picture in a minute of why we did that. And it's something what we call a soot print. And so imagine you got this structure is on fire, right? You got all this black carcinogenic smoke coming off this structure. Well, once what goes up has to come down at some point. So when the smoke comes down and starts to cool, it's going to drop down somewhere around the structure. That structure, wherever those particulates land, that's your hot zone. So it's kind of hard, it may be hard to establish where that zone is, but you have to kind of use your best judgment. Maybe your hot zone needs to be 75, maybe it needs to be 100 feet out from the structure. So you need to, figure out and establish those zones. So while the scene may, we've all rolled up on these scenes. The private calls you a few days later and you're like, hey, can you come out here and walk this scene with me? I got a couple questions for you. Sure, no problem. You show up. Hey, man, I don't need PPE. This scene looks safe to me. Well, while there's no visible smoke, nothing that looks unsafe, right? There are other safety issues. There's roof materials hanging down that could potentially fall on you. Is the structure weakened? Probably. I'm not a structural engineer, but from my experience, that structure looks like it's weakened. Could it fall on you? There's potential. So, do you need PPE? Yes, you need PPE. So there's no time where you should never wear nothing. So you need to evaluate that scene and determine what level of PPE you need. Do you need a full level A hazmat suit? No, that's a little overkill, right? But do you need structural turnouts potentially that wander through here just because of the potential for falling through a floor or cuts, scrapes, punctures? Possibly. Maybe that's the level you do need. Do you need an SCBA? Probably not. Will an APR work? Probably. Or a PAPR? Yeah. So that's where that risk analysis needs to come into play as the fire investigator on scene, having the knowledge that we're going to get impart on you and the resources I'll give to you, that where you have to make that judgment call on scene. So all these scenes, they present all kinds of issues, right? So you got slip, trips, and falls. We've all been there. I've fallen on the ice, so it's not fun. We've got utility issues like, was the power turned off? Or is the gas turned off? Is there water spraying everywhere and you can't get into where you need to? That's, the weather. We investigate fires in a lot of different weather environments. And then how are you feeling that day? Have you been up all night? What kind of physical condition are you in? And then depending upon the PPE you're wearing, it's going to impact your physical fitness also, right? So if you're wearing full structural turnout with an SCBA, right, you're going to get fatigued a lot faster than maybe wearing Tyvek with an APR. You're going to get less fatigued less quickly wearing Tyvek. So every incident we go to presents different hazards. Some of those hazards are biological. So don't think of a biological hazard just as a human hazard, right? Think of it like from the mold spores, any plants, any bug bites, right? So how many times have you been to a fire scene where there's bees buzzing around, or where you've gotten sting, or stung by something? So how many times have you shown up a week later to go to a fire scene for whatever reason, and it's been boarded up? How much water do firefighters dump inside of a structure fire to put that fire out or control it? And then you show up later and the food in the refrigerators, it's starting to grow and there's mold on the walls. So is that a structure you're going to wander in and not put any type of PPE on? You're like, oh, I just got to run in and grab a quick picture. Or I got to grab in and do one quick thing. I don't have time to put my PPE on. Is that the level of risk you want to take? So any scene that's more than 48 hours, with any level of moisture or food source left inside, it'll have mold starting to grow. So you have to protect yourself inside any structure, whether it's, as soon as the fire is extinguished or it's a week after. So we know smoke contains all kinds of a toxic soup, right? We don't know what's in there. So especially with these newer homes, the contents of that smoke is even worse. So it contains anything and everything, right? So because we don't really know what's in it, you got to protect yourself with the proper PPE. So if I were to roll up on this structure and it's smoking like this, I'll be in full structural turnouts with an SCBA on, even if I'm making an exterior examination of it. So who knows? Because maybe I need to walk around, the one side of that structure where all the smoke's pouring out to get a picture or something. So I just mentioned this. So, due to the complexity of the fire environment, we don't know how to characterize all the hazards that could be present in there. So some cases, toxic hazards have dissipated after several hours, or they're not. But they can also be trapped in debris. So when you start doing your layering through that fire debris, you may be releasing things that are trapped underneath that, if you're potentially using gas monitors that are detecting for a certain gas, and you wander through the structure, you're like, hey, I got 0 readings, we're good to go. We can step down to whatever the next level of respiratory protection. as you start to layer through that debris, you may be releasing those gases as you move those contents. So let's jump into that research. So I love the research stuff. I've been kind of in that research realm since I started. I was in college, and kind of started in 2006 when I did my own kind of air monitoring study for my senior project in college. So that kind of really got me started in that research side of it. So UL did our very first kind of post-fire project where they actually took and did 18 test fires in a full-size structure, and then they went in and did air sampling for us. So this is the first time that we actually have true air sampling data in a post-fire environment. And so they went through and did 1 hour, 1 and 3 and 5 days, and we're looking at gases and particulates, like what is present. So they went through, did normal fire investigation activities like we would normally do, just try to disturb things, like what's kicking up in the air. And so particulate levels ranged from moderate to extremely hazardous in air quality indices. So all the way out to 5 days. So remember, we talked about having that respiratory protection, right? So just because you roll into that apartment unit 3-4 days later and it looks good to go, remember this stuff through data and research that's been done, it's still there for 5 days. It could be there even longer after that. We just don't know. It's, the gas levels in their research started to drop down off after 2 hours. But the formaldehyde seems to be the one that's really hanging around. And that we think is really coming from the synthetic fabrics and materials that are just present in today's homes, unfortunately. And what this study really told us is we got to do more. We need more data, and we need to really study, like, are we wearing the right respiratory protection for what we're doing? We know it's not feasible to be strapped to an SCBA the entire time we're doing an investigation, but is there other things out there, or do we need to start leaning on the industry to start creating something for our industry? So what came out of this study was he got elevated and hazardous levels of airborne particulates. It's during every phase of the post-fire investigation. So, and it depends upon the activities that you're doing. So if you're walking through the structure, just stepping on fire debris kicks up particulates. And then airborne formaldehyde concentrations, they could exceed the recommended exposure limits. And those recommended exposure limits are based upon OSHA exposure limits. So another study that was done by the University of Miami, which is actually really cool. So they actually did it with some fire investigators in their area. They actually wore silicone wristbands. So kind of think of the Live Strong wristbands that were popular back in the day. They found out the silicone is very porous, and so they issued some wristbands for some fire investigators, and they collected those wristbands, and that they were able to put them back and bring them back to the lab and analyze them. And what they found was they had 16, based upon the Environmental Protection Agency's priority PAHs so polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. That's a mouthful, right? So just put it this way: there was nasty stuff present, and so that just tells us right there that we need to protect ourselves with respiratory protection. The next one this is the one that is very new. We just completed this study last year, just wrapped up. And so I know that we had one fire investigator from the state of Oregon participate in it. So thank you, whoever did that. If you're on here, I appreciate it. So this is what we called the FLARE study. And it was what they call a photo voice study. And so basically the whoever volunteered to participate in it, the fire investigators basically submitted pictures of what they perceived as kind of health and safety or risk. And then kind of what they promoted like as a healthy living kind of on their days off and things like that. And so this is just kind of a breakdown of like who participated throughout the country. So we had a total of 56 people that consented and 56 people that actually completed the actual study. So we're happy about that. It's a baseline data. We were hoping to get more. but that's okay. It's a start. So this was phase one. Phase two, I'm super excited about. This is the one that I'm really jazzed about. So this is called the FICO study. So it's the Fire Investigator Comprehensive Occupational Assessment Study. I guess they don't pick short names for studies ever, but so we're looking for 200 fire investigators. And so what this study is really going to do is we're going to take, and these are all voluntary. And so all the you see on the screen there, those are the things that the university is going to be collecting through this for this study. And so all this is they're going to establish a baseline. So they're going to do toenail collection. They're going to do the silicone wristbands, but it wouldn't be just one silicone wristband. So we've talked about potentially multiple different times. So one would be inside your rig. You would put one at the beginning of your shift so we can see what you're exposed to throughout the day. And then so if you get tapped for a fire, you would then throw another one on as you go. And then possibly if you're wearing, you are wearing your PPE, you would have one and you would somehow clip it onto your PPE so it's on the outside so we can see what exposures are going on the outside of your PPE. And then when you're all said and done with that, you would basically put it in a sealed vial and you ship it back to University of Miami. And there's no cost to your agency for any of this study. And then we can see what's going on with your exposures. And then we talked about adding another wristband in for your day off, just to see what you're being exposed to on your day off. So maybe you've got a burn pile that you're burning. What are you being exposed to there, or are you barbecuing? The other part is the musculoskeletal exam. So cool thing about this, the doctor that actually is leading that part of the exam is actually the head coach for the University of Miami's baseball team. So really cool to be able to have somebody who understands the musculoskeletal system. So range of motion and injury screening. So we know that fire investigators are exposed to shoulder injuries and lower back injuries. So hopefully everybody's nodding their head. So I know I have some shoulder and back issues. So that's what we're focused on, and we know we have some issues. Standard blood draw, just looking for inflammatory stuff and like what's going on. And then saliva on the baseline, they said that would be kind of the most intense because they're going to take a bunch of samples initially, at least up to 6 vials, and then after that it would be on most likely a quarterly basis. And then the University of Miami actually has a free exposure recorder app, so personal exposure tracking. Theirs is the only one that we're aware of that actually has fire investigator exposure tracking within their app. We're not aware of any other ones that actually has a specific section for fire investigators, and they also track near miss of fire investigators. So all that data that they're collecting, it's all screened. They don't know who you are on the backside. So the cool thing is that you can track all your incidents that you're responding to, and heaven forbid in the future, for some reason you have to have a file a claim for cancer. Hopefully you never do. You have all this data available to you. You don't have to rely on your agency providing that documentation to you. The other study that started to take off, and then it ran out of funding. And hopefully, Dr. Orman's going to be able to take this off again. He's trying to apply for more funding. But the University of North Carolina's their textile division, we worked with them to identify different types of PPE, and I'll show you on the next slide the different types of PPE that we looked at. So on the bottom, I know you can't click on this, but I'll email these slides out so you can click on that link. That takes you right to a webinar and talks about his study and the different types of PPE that they tested. But we said these are this is the different types of PPE that we know fire investigators wear, and we want to know, like, is it good? Is this the right stuff we should be wearing? And like, if when we do wear it, are particulates or anything getting through? And so this is a screen grab from that webinar. And so as you can see on here, don't look at the numbers on here. It's just a bunch of data. But we tested kind of your standard base layer. It's just basically 511 pants and a long sleeve shirt, and a double cartridge APR with P100 cartridges. And then we kind of went up there from the two models of Tyvek are model 400 and 800. There's a wide range of Tyvek that's out there, and we don't know which Tyvek is best yet. They did test a flight suit. This flight suit is an interesting thing. It's actually impregnated with carbon. And then as you watch the webinar, you'll actually see the data light up green saying that this is the most amazing, best thing ever. Well, the thing they don't tell you about through this study is that they actually found this flight. It's a used flight suit they found on eBay somewhere, and they just wanted to test it and see how well it worked. Yes, it works fantastic, but I don't know anybody's going to be running around in a flight suit conducting a fire investigation. And then the next step up was kind of like the rescue wildland coverall, and then rescue kind of wildland two-piece. So think of this kind of like the tech gen gear that's out there. Some of this has a particulate filter under it, some of it doesn't. So it depends on what you order. Because if you're wanting a true wildland gear, once you add that vapor barrier underneath, you lose that wildland certification. And then there's also, that's kind of what the next one is here. So that wildland, and then your standard structural turnout, and then particular blocking structural, and then a particular blocking structural turnout coverall. So if you get a chance, I want to say I'm happy to email these slides over to, and then we can get them pushed out. But so you can click on that link, or I can just send the link, drop the link in the chat, so everybody can look at it. It's a really interesting webinar, but unfortunately, they were only able to test one set of gear due to funding. They actually ran out of money after they tested the one set of gear. I believe it was the Rescue Wildland 2 gear, and then that was it. Honestly, after testing this Rescue Wildland 2 gear, it performed about the same as Tyvek. So we're trying to figure out like what's going on here, what is better. We don't know what's best yet. So hopefully he gets his funding back this year and he can continue his testing. They also did a wipe study for us because we wanted to understand, like, are these hero wipes and all the stuff that we're hearing out there, is it better than just washing your hands with soap and water? So what we found was that through his studies was that the effectiveness of a wipe actually it decreased when you're cleaning like porous materials. So they actually used like a pig skin as a sample to understand like where was a wipe most effective and where was it not. So if it was a low molecular weight PAH, it seemed to work pretty well. But if it was like a high molecular weight, like if it was like an oil or something, if it had some kind of surfactant to it, it did poorly of removing it from your skin. So what they came up with was really the action of wiping the skin might be more important than any kind of specific wipe at the end of the day. So it really needs to be more studies done on this to really understand like what is best out there. So there's two toxic hazard categories at every fire. So there's gases that typically dissipate, and then there's particulates that remain until the scene's cleaned or demolished or structure's gone, right? So typically it's a chronic issue and it's not acute. So our toxic gases, so we know that during the fire for some time after, carbon monoxide, hydrogen cyanide, and formaldehyde, they're present. But the duration for others can vary. So we don't know what is present. And that's why when we recommend, if you're out there using any type of gas monitoring equipment, it's going to give you potentially false sense of security because you may not know what you're coming up against. And if you don't really truly understand your gas monitor, so some gas monitors, their sensors are cross sensitive to other gases. And if it's giving you a negative reading, that means it's picking up some other gases that it's present for. So unless you're a true expert on that monitor and those sensors and what they're picking up, you're going to have a false sense of security behind that. So it's difficult to judge the extent of gas formation in fires. We just don't know about it, right? So we know that time by itself it's a good predictor of possible hazards. So in one instance had high levels of formaldehydes were found at a scene 3 days after a fire. So the size of the fire is not a good indicator of the potential hazard. So we had a small kitchen fire that actually produced the highest readings. So think about maybe you show up on a bathroom fan fire. It's all melted plastic, right? Insulation on the wiring is melted down. maybe that produces your worst readings as you go into a structure. So think about particulates, right? This is just a great example. So, the stuff we can see, right, is like 50 to 70 microns, kind of in that area. So it's the stuff you can't see. You might be able to see it, like we've probably all seen it. It kind of looks like glitter floating through the air as you're walking through a structure. You're like, oh, I can see the particulates. You're like, yes, that's the stuff you can see. The problem is it's the stuff that you can't see. It's the stuff that's getting down to that less than those kind of the less than 2.5 microns. That's the stuff that's getting deep into your lungs, kind of deep down into those bronchioles. So that's the really bad stuff that's going to get down in there and cause the long-term problems. So you can't get that stuff out. So that's where we really need you to wear the proper respiratory protection. So it's the stuff you can't see that you're inhaling almost on a daily basis when you're conducting your fire investigations. So just think about your particulates, right? So if it's greater than 10 microns, your nose does and throat do a really pretty good job of filtering that stuff out, right? But if it's starting to get smaller than those 10 microns, it can get in the lungs. Anything smaller than 2.5 microns, it's going to get deep into your lungs and it's going to cause problems for you in the long term. Anything smaller than 1 micron, it's going to go even deeper and it's going to cause even more problems. So in 2010, when you all did a study for us, they noted that 97+% of the particles at overhaul were too small to be visible by the naked eye, suggesting that clean air was really not clean. So I remember when I was at a different agency, firefighters would come through with their gas monitor, be like, "Yep, air's clean, good to go." But I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, the air is actually not clean, but they're just looking for carbon monoxide and oxygen levels and LEL. So I'm like, okay, thanks. So then I knew what I needed to do and with that information, right? So I knew I needed to better protect myself because I knew that other things were still present and that what they were looking for wasn't what I was looking for. So just think about all the stuff that's floating through the air, right? Even when it's a smoky day from a wildfire, even that stuff's is bad for you, right? So we call them nanoparticulates. That's the stuff you can't see. That's the stuff that's floating around in the air during and after the event. So think about when you wander back to your scene and you're walking around or you got to dig something and move something around and you're like, oh, it's been 4 or 5 days. There's nothing present. I'll just move this piece of whatever and I'll be good to go. I don't need any respiratory protection. You're disturbing something and you're going to kick something up. So you need to wear proper PPE. So what we don't know is how long the gases persist when they're attached to those nanoparticulates. So they're still likely present after the scene are dug out. We just don't know. There's not enough research and data out there to tell us like how long that gas molecule sticks to the nanoparticulate. So if you inhale that nanoparticulate, is the gas molecule still bound to it? And does it go deeper into your lungs? We don't know. We don't have that data yet. We're hopefully going to get that data someday. So think about it this way, like acute exposure can be considered relatively high exposure concentration over a short period of time. So chronic exposure is usually a lower concentration of a toxic substance over a more extended period of time. So after the lungs, the skin's the body's second largest organ and area. It's highly absorptive. So some areas of the skin are more permeable than others, specifically the face, the angle of the jaw, the neck and the throat, and the groin. So the body's defense mechanisms include nasal hairs. So that's the particulates that are great. That 10 micron area, what does a really good job filtering it out for you. So when you forget to put that respiratory protection on and you go home and blow your nose and you got that black stuff that comes out, there's your 10 microns. So cilia and the cilia and escalator, it's kind of like the escalator in the lungs, right? So difference in gender, weight, age, and nutritional hormonal status, and then somebody's genetic sequences and physical and social factors, they all affect your toxic manifestation in every person. So since inhalation is the most common, we need to focus on that. But you also need to be aware of all entry methods, right? So while inhalation is the most common, let's remember absorption and ingestion, right? So maybe you just finished digging that fire scene. It's been a long day. You need to eat lunch. So you step out. Maybe you forget it's a busy day. You're tired. You forget to wash your hands. You grab that slice of pizza and you start eating, and you didn't wash your hands before you started doing that. Do you have carcinogens on your hands? There's potential, even though maybe you did double glove. Maybe that stuff's still present. So remember, you gotta take care of everything. So leukemia in as little as 3 years, and lung cancer in as long as 30 years. So think about that. So leukemia hits home for us because we unfortunately just lost a firefighter, and he battled for 1 year. He was only 30 years old. So the association between risk factors and human disease are exceeding complex, and the exposure scenarios are completely diverse. So many factors come into play. So in some instances, like an increased dose can lead to a shorter period before tumors appear or a greater number of tumors. So we know we need to do better, and we need to do better. So bottom line, the average firefighter spends like 1 to 5% of their time in the fire event, right? So this equates to 20 to 100 hours annually. So consider how much time you're spending in the scene, right? So if it hasn't hurt me today, I shouldn't have to change my attitude or my culture, right? So that's the way we've always done it. So we're good to go. So if I don't have any symptoms, I'm fine, right? I'm good to go. I did my physical. Doc says I'm good. I can keep progressing. I don't need to wear my PPE. I don't need to wear my respiratory protection, right? No. You need to change that mindset. We need to shift our culture. We need to shift our entire industry so that we don't have 30-year-old firefighters or 30-year-old fire investigators dying from leukemia or cancer. So how do we better protect ourselves and stay safe and healthy and retire with 20, 30 years into the future? Oh, sorry. So right now we have our third edition of our best practices. So this kind of gives you some great information. They are best practices and guidelines. This guide is actually referenced in 921 and in other places now. So it's reassuring that there's other entities out there that are picking up on it and referencing it now. So we do have fourth edition update underway as we speak. We keep receiving new research data that as we were ready to roll fourth edition out, we got new updated research update that changed some information within fourth edition. So we pulled it back. We want to make sure that whatever research data that is out there is the most current that we can get out there to the industry. So we're hoping later this fall, wintertime, we can get fourth edition rolled out and you can have the most current information. So single most important takeaway for all fire investigator is remember, even a cold fire scene doesn't mean it's safe and that no PPE is needed. Remember, you need to protect yourself. And there's still, unfortunately, an underappreciation of health risks associated with the post-fire scene by fire investigators. So it's a culture that we need to change and that we need to do better. But it's not just about ourselves. We need to think about what else do we have to take care of? We got to take care of our vehicle, right? So how do you do that? Do you have a pickup truck where you can separate the stuff? If not, is there another way you can do that where you can use sealed containers to keep your gear in? Can you carry 6 mil plastic bags, throw your dirty gear in and seal it up, get it back to the station so you can decon it there? How often are you cleaning your rig out? Do you actually take the time to like wipe down your dash, vacuum out the seats, vacuum out the floorboards and clean it up? Who's actually taking the time to do that? I do it at least once every 6 months. I probably should do it a little more often. It's a little dusty environment over here, but it's usually dirt. But we get more wildfires this time of year. As I go on more wildfires, I clean it more often. And then I stop by Fleet and I change out my cabin filter more frequently also. So let's not be these guys. Okay. So every scene's going to be different. So let's not roll up on the scene in shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops to conduct a fire investigation, right? So I'm hoping that's just the homeowner that rolled through there. But I always give the homeowner a caveat that says, hey, you shouldn't roll in there with this stuff on. These are at minimum, you should be wearing these things to protect yourself. These are the hazards that are potentially present. You got to at least have the basics, right? I'm hoping that every agency is providing you PPE. It's required by OSHA. So I'm hoping that they're giving it to you. So if they're not giving you structural turnouts, let's hopefully you can get Tyvek, some kind of lightweight tech gen gear. Let's get something to protect yourself. So at a minimum, right, you need to have a helmet. If you don't have goggles, full face respirators is great because it's protecting your mucous membranes really well. Gloves, double glove, right? I wear an EMS glove and then I wear like those disposable like rubber dipped ones, so you can just toss them. They're super cheap and inexpensive. Home Depot sells them by the big pack. Some type of protective outerwear, right? So depending upon my scene dictates my PPE. So it depends on what I'm doing. So if I'm working a fatality, I have my lightweight turnouts on underneath, and then I throw Tyvek on over top of that because I don't want the bodily fluids and stuff on my Tyvek, so I can just toss that at the scene and leave it. Do you need hearing protection? Possibly. Depends on what's going on around you, right? So our minimum recommendation from the Health and Safety Committee is that you either have a half or a full face with P100 particulate filters, and make sure that filter it says OV, FM. You can use a Seaburn Cap 1 canister. Some canisters do require some adapters on them. So just know your mask. I know that the new Scott C5 mask does not currently have a 40 millimeter adapter. So I'm in conversations with Scott to figure out how we can get one made and have that available. But currently their mask is not certified for use as an APR. It's just an SCBA mask for positive pressure. So you may have to have a different mask. Unfortunately, I have to carry two masks right now. So that's the only drawback I have. There are canisters out there that are certified to European standards. You're going to have to if you think that canister's good or better than what you find in the US, you just need to compare them to what the NIOSH certifications are and see if they're equal or better. So we kind of talked about the different types of PPE, right? So the hot scene A and B and the different types of PPE you need to be wearing. So at a minimum for a hot scene A and B, structural firefighter turnout gear, that includes all your your coat, your pant, your boots, your helmet, and a particular blocking hood. So if you don't have a particular blocking hood, if you've never wore one, they're amazing. They do a great job of keeping the particulates out. When you take it off, you don't have that campfire smell in your hair. They work really well. You can do structural gloves. I don't do structural gloves because of the dexterity thing. Like I said, I wear an EMS glove underneath, and then I'll wear those kind of dipped garden gloves. Those seem to work well. So if you're in a hot scene B, you can kind of go to a disposable coverall if the fire is out and there's no hot spots or rekindle potential. So again, you as the investigator need to make that evaluation, that risk evaluation while you're at the scene. So if there's ever smoke present still, I'm still in my SCBA. Obviously, a PAP or an APR can't use it when there's still smoke present. You could do coveralls or something underneath just to help in decon. So one less step you have to do while you're on the scene. So a warm scene, obviously more than 2 hours, less than 72 hours. So turnout gear or coveralls, preferably a disposable. If you're doing some kind of coverall like a Tyvek, that completely covers your arms and legs. A helmet, obviously, need to wear your chin strap. So if something falls and whacks you in the head, your helmet's going to pop off. You don't have that strap on, right? Your boots should be steel-toed, punctured, and with a puncture-resistant sole also. And then the proper respiratory protection, whether that's SCBA, APR, or PAPR. So that's a judgment call you need to make based upon the risk assessment that you determine on scene. And then that cold scene where it's more than 72 hours, you can step down to a coverall, a Tyvek coverall. Again, you need to have the proper boots, the puncture resistance, proper respiratory protection, the gloves, and be sure. Sometimes there's usually a gap in between the Tyvek and your glove, so you may have to seal that up with some type of tape so that you don't get debris in there. And then I've seen some concerns with the Tyvek where debris can fall in through the top of the boots. So some Tyvek has little like boots. They're actual booties. When you step into your boot, you don't have that issue where you get contamination. So I know as fire investigators, once the party's over, everybody leaves and we're kind of left standing there holding the bucket by ourselves, right? So we're like, how do we decon? Well, I usually hope that the water didn't get turned off, and I have my decon bucket, and so I use it to go over and hopefully the fire investigator or the homeowner's water is still there and they have a hose. I can use it and I can fill up my bucket with my decon material and decon my gear. I could rinse off. I do carry wipes with me. I use the Hero wipe, so that's just one I found I like. Then I'll wipe my skin down, and then I carry 6 mil plastic bags. In order to figure out the size of the bag, I had to lay my turnout gear out and then measure it to figure out what size of bag I needed. But got those from Home Depot. Got a case of them. I just carry 3 or 4 in my decon bucket, and so then I just pull one out when my gear is all cleaned off. I throw it in the bag and I seal it up. I don't have the luxury of a pickup truck right now. So I seal that up and then I place it in the back of my rig. And when I get to the station, I take it out and then it gets washed in the extractor. So what about other types of fires? We talk about structure fires all the time, right? But what about anything else that you go on? What about wildland fires? What about boat fires? What about vehicle fires? So those aren't anything different, right? So boat fires are even worse. They got fiberglass. So what about EV fires? So there's some new studies that we just got emailed to us the other day about so the particulates coming off EV fires. It's pretty bad stuff. So hopefully when that data we can get incorporated into 4th edition, we can get even more information out to everyone. So think about confined space also. So that's another hazard that we potentially run into. So technically OSHA regulates that if you're going to go into a confined space, right? So there's potential we go into a crawl space. Is it a confined space? Possibly. Our attics, yeah. So you might have to think about that. So think about the air that's in there. Is it, can you go in there? Think about the gases. Are things getting trapped in there so think about what you need to be wearing properly. Maybe an APR is not appropriate when you have to go into the crawl space. Possible oxygen deficiency or more gases are trapped in that space. So again, you need to, as an investigator, conduct that risk analysis. So we talked about this. So if you're going to be doing, eating or drinking, you got to remove all your PPE or most of it and wash your hands and face with either soap and water or those cleaning wipes or some kind of waterless. And then if you're going to take a break away from the scene. Don't be in the wind path of all the particulates come blowing off that structure or vehicle and it's blowing right into your rehab area. So what can you do to protect yourself? So wear that proper PPE. Make sure that when you're properly cleaning and deconning yourself and showering as soon as you can. And then keep all your contaminated gear out of the vehicle, out of your home. Don't take it home. That's kind of the battle with private fire investigators. They unfortunately have to take it home and they wash their gear with everything else. Try to gross decon all your equipment on scene. Try to not put it back in your vehicle. And then maintain an exposure log. So there's a link here. You can go to University of Miami. You can download it in the App Store. It's free. You just create a username and password, and then you're in. You can start tracking all your incidents that you go to. So who should we be sharing this information with? Everybody and everybody, right? So you may be working with arson detectives in your law enforcement world. They may be wandering into the fire scene with you. they probably don't have the right PPE to be wandering through those fire scenes. So make sure that you share this information with them just so that they have the right information. So some of the other areas that we talk about are fire arson dogs. So we are hoping to try to get a research study done and figure out what their exposure is to particulates. Think about it, they shove their nose right in that fire debris. So how fast are they potentially getting cancer from helping us do our job and locate accelerants for us? So just some quick final thoughts. So in the back in the day, right, we used to ride tailboard. We used to not have to wear gloves. We did CPR with no mask. Well, we don't do that stuff anymore, right? Because through research and studies, we found those things aren't safe. So for the same reason those things went away, these things need to go away also. So we need to wear our PPE. We need to stop the practice of not wearing our PPE. We need to better protect ourselves. So we need to replace it with this picture. So we as fire investigators, even as the younger generation needs to come up, and if you're a senior fire investigator, we need to start changing our behavior and modeling the right behavior for the younger generation that's coming up so that they can retire. And when they do retire, they get to spend 30 years in retirement and enjoy life afterwards. So I'm happy to, I think we got about 9 minutes left. I'm happy to answer any questions. If anybody has any questions, you can throw them in the chat or you can just come off mute. Or if you have anything even more in depth, here's my direct contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any emails. You can call me or email me. Perfect. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate you coming in and sitting through. And like I said, this presentation could be a 2 and a 4 hour presentation, so we can go even more in depth if we want to in the future. But thanks for coming out.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Of course.